Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Actually, this is my second video on today. What I really wanted to talk about and what I was actually led to talk about on this video is I've actually been on YouTube and I have subscribed to one teacher's channel that used to be a teacher, but what I'm starting to see is how teachers that work in the education field and they're talking about how they resigned from their teaching job. And as I look at some of these videos and I was watching one teacher video and she was talking about how there's there's like no support or no protection and very little accountability for students. Students are not really being held accountable for their behavior or the poor choices or the bad decisions that they choose to make, and teachers are not being supported and teachers are not being protected. And it seemed like it doesn't matter what happened, it just seems like the teacher is the one that is going to be at fault. The teacher is going to be the one that is going to be reprimanded or written up or whatever the case may be. The teacher may be the one that have to be talked to, or disciplined or whatever the case may be, because you have to understand that teachers are adults and children and students are children. But we're living in a different time now. We are living in a different time now. And as I listen to a lot of these teachers who have actually created YouTube channels, who have actually started a platform, and who have actually shared their experiences being a teacher in the field, and has also shared other teachers' stories in the field, I understand exactly where they're coming from because I work in the field of education. I work in the ECE field. My background is mainly birth up to 5. So right now I'm working with preschoolers, but I'm not a teacher, but I have been a Head Start teacher. I have been a preschool teacher. I've been an infant teacher. I've been a toddler teacher. But right now, and that was the reason why I went back to school to further my education, is so that I can level up to an admin position. So now I'm not 100% teaching in the classroom. I currently work in a administration position as an education coordinator. But I hear these teacher stories, everything that they're saying is true. Because even at the preschool level, I see a lot of students coming in, and just at that 3, 4, and 5-year-old that what I'm starting to see a trend of, and that is really a huge issue, is that a lot of kids are coming in at that very young age already experiencing so much trauma. You have a 4-year-old entering into a preschool program, and possibly for the first time, but has already been in 3 and 4 foster homes, and this is a 4-year-old child. We see things like abuse. We see things like dysfunction. We see things where there's a whole lot of legal battle. Drug and alcohol abuse, children being passed around from foster home to foster home. We see things like neglect and things of that, and this is at the preschool level. So that is the trend and issue that I'm starting to see just so early on, where children are entering into preschool with so much trauma. It's so much trauma. Not only has the children has experienced so much trauma, but then you have a parent that has also experienced so much trauma. So I'm starting to see that at the the preschool level, so much trauma. Also too, what I'm starting to see, and this is more prevalent in families that are living in poverty or families that are low income, that you're seeing a lot of lack of resources, lack of support. You're seeing a lack of parent involvement. So when children, because see, when children experience traumatic backgrounds, it really shows in their behavior. So it's like they come to school and they could display such extreme behavior that honestly, at a 3, 4, and 5 year old, like the teacher can't do anything with that child. Administration can't do anything with that child. That child does not have the skill set, does not have the social emotional skills, that their skills is delayed, that they have not fully developed at a normal range. So that child cannot sit down and learn because that child has not fully learned those skills. So now the child is in the classroom and the child, does not have that skill set and has dealt with so much trauma, and it shows so much in their behavior. So then you have a lot of teachers that are trying to manage behavior, or you have a lot of classrooms that have a lot of behavior problems, behavior issues, and what that does is it takes teaching time away because teachers are having to address all of these behavior issues and all of these behavior problems. So that means that teaching and learning time has been lost because kids won't stop hitting, kids won't stop fighting, they're standing on tables, they're jumping off chairs, they're beating up the teachers, and this is at 3 and 4 and 5 years old. And see, when they're young like that, there has to be services put in place. There has to be supports. There has to be some kind of therapy or counseling that these children need to be involved in, or these services must be provided to them. And at this age is considered early intervention because sooner or later they'll be in elementary, they'll be in middle school, they'll be in high school, and now things are so out of control, it's like there's nothing that can be done, and that's why you see just a couple of weeks ago, during when these kids were, it was a 13, 14-year-old here in the city that I live in, when they should have been at school, they was out robbing. They was out robbing houses. They was out casing houses, a 13 and 14-year-old during school time. When they should have been in school, they was out robbing houses. And when things have gotten so out of hand like that, things have gotten out of control, it seems like when this child should have got the help, when they should have got the services, when they're supposed to have gotten the support that they needed, they did not receive that. And now it's at a point where they're out of control, and now they're out here committing crime. Now they're out here hurting other people because now you have a lot of children that are hurting. A lot of children that is neglected and that's being abused, and they're not getting that quality time, and they're not getting that affirmation, and they're not getting the love that they need from their parent and the adults and those who are around them. And another thing that I'm starting to see is not only out of children coming in at the preschool level with so many, just already so much trauma, students at 3 years old getting kicked out of daycare. Like, the daycare director is like, your child can't come here no more. And this is a 3-year-old child, because this child's behavior is so out of hand and so extreme that the teacher cannot teach. You have a teacher that wants to teach, but because there is extreme behavior issues and problems, it takes that teacher away from actually teaching, because now she has to try to manage or try to deal and handle with all of the behavior that is going on in the classroom. So now you have students in the classroom that is ready and that is prepared to learn, but then the teacher cannot teach because she's trying to manage and she's trying to diminish the behavior issues that other students may be having in the classroom, because they're just not at that level. They're just not, at that level developmentally to be able to sit down and be ready and learn. So there's a delay there. There's a setback there. When they can't sit down and they can't participate in a large group setting so they can learn the skills that they need, so they can learn the grade level skills that they need, so that they can be prepared for kindergarten. Because a lot of them are coming in with so much trauma. It's a lack of parent involvement. It's a lack of, parents can't come to meetings. They can't come to conferences. You can't get a hold of parents over the phone because, you're dealing with a lot of single parent households that are mainly made up of women who may have multiple children, but then you may have a mom that has multiple children. Like, I can't talk to you on the phone. I can't come to conference. I can't come to no meeting because I'm working 2 jobs and I got 3 and 4 other children that I have to tend to. So then there's a lack of parent involvement. Like, we can't get a hold of a parent. We can't get her to come to the meeting. We can't get her to come to the conference and things of that. So then that's a barrier. Then that's a challenge. A lack of parental involvement. Kids so young coming in with so much trauma. And the city that I live in now, but before I lived in Chicago for 15 years. And, kids at like the middle school and high school level will come and just for the purpose of, I'm going to do whatever I want to do here. If I want to curse the teacher out, if I want to jump on anybody I want to jump on, then that is what I'm going to do. And it's like they have it already set in their mindsets that I'm not coming to school to learn. I'm not coming to school to get my education. They're mad, they're angry, they're upset, and they have so much built up inside of them because for a long period of time, something was missed. Somebody wasn't paying attention to something when they should have been getting the services, when they should have been getting the supports, when they should have been going to therapy or counseling or something. Then no one was really paying attention and they didn't receive the help that they need. So now things have gotten so out of hand and so out of control. It's like no one really can do anything about it. And then unfortunately, that's how they get lost to the system. That's how they get lost to the system, and that's how they get lost to the streets. Because it's like no one else can do anything. The schools can't do nothing. Mama can't do nothing. Okay, so I guess the jail, I guess the prison, and it's really unfortunate and it's really sad because that child should have gotten help. Somewhere along the way, something was missed. When that child, and it was missed for something wasn't paid close attention to for a very long time. This had been going on, and now things are so out of hand. And my take on it too is you have another issue that I'm seeing in the field is that some parents want the teacher to do it all. Teachers are not considered a child's most and important teacher. The parent is. It all starts in the household. It all starts in the household. Teachers and those who work with students, we are partakers when it comes to students' learning and development. But we should not be held fully responsible when it comes to teaching and educating students. When students come to school and when they're in our classrooms and when they are in our care, yes, we must do our job. But we have no control over when they leave our classrooms, when they leave our schools and go home. We have no control over that. Learning is continuous. Learning should always be happening. There should always be teachable moments. There should never be a time where learning is not happening. Learning continues. So even when children leave school, they go home. Learning, it should all start in the home anyway. because parents are considered their first and most important teacher. And teachers are in positions to help parents in order for them to help their children. So teachers help parents help their children. But we can't be held fully responsible when this needs to be a relationship that is a two-way street. And that's what it means when teachers and parents collab and are in a collaboration, which means that they're working together to ensure that students are reaching their greatest potential and reaching to the best of their ability when it comes to their education, when it comes to their learning and their growth and development. That teachers and parents have to work together. But for a parent to just put all the responsibility on the teachers, that's so unrealistic. Because yes, I am here to teach your child and educate your child, but I need you to get involved and I need you to work with me, because what if your child is having behavior problems and behavior issues, and I need to have a conversation with you so that we can brainstorm and come up with some kind of ideas or solutions that you help me while I work with your child in the classroom. And that you help me as I work with your child in the classroom, but you share with me on how you handle your child at home, and maybe I can apply those same strategies in the classroom as I work with your child, that we talk and we communicate and we work through this. But if it's a one-sided relationship and it's just a one-sided street where you have a teacher that is trying to work with other teachers, or work with a team of people, like a school-based counselor, maybe work with a coach, maybe work with a mental health specialist, trying to work with admin, because you have a teacher that's not receiving any kind of support from the student's parent, that you can't even get a hold of the parent. You can't even, the parent doesn't even have time to come in for a conference or anything. So now you're just doing your best to try to work with this while this child is in your classroom and while the child is in the school setting, So, sometimes it's hard and it's very challenging on teachers, when it comes to students' behavior. And one thing about me is that the reason why I chose to go into admin is because it was more of a promotion for me. It was more of me leveling up and more of an advancement for me, and that's why I chose to further my education. But the thing about me is that I don't mind helping in the classroom. I don't mind supporting in the classroom. I don't mind stepping in and even subbing in the classroom, but to actually go back, but to actually go back into the classroom as a full-time teacher, that's not something that I would like to do. I feel like right now, being in an admin or being a part of administration, that going back to the classroom would be more of like a step back for me, when me working in administration is like a higher up and a moving forward for me. And times are constantly changing. You're constantly more generations are being birthed out, and I just think that it's just only going to get more challenging, and that teachers, we have to do our best to try to put plans in place, to try to put services and supports and strategies in place, even when it seems like, even when we don't even have really the support, or even when we don't have the parent or the guardian of a child on board. But something's going to have to happen, because your child can't keep coming to school, and this is what we have to do, and this is what we have to put up with as far as this extreme behavior 7 and 8 hours a day, so when I begin to listen to a lot of these teachers and how some of them are saying the reason why I quit my teaching job, some of them are sharing teacher stories. A lot of that is true. When our children are not getting what they are crying out for in the household, a lot of times it's quality time, it's love, it's physical affection, it's affirmation. Like, if they're not receiving that in the household, what they'll start going out there in the streets, looking for it in the streets. And the guys and the girls out there on the streets, they're going to take heed to that, because they're paying more attention to me than what I'm getting at home. They're providing for me more than I'm getting provided for inside my household. They're giving me money, they're buying me food, they're putting money in my pocket, they're buying me brand new shoes. I'm not getting none of this inside the household. But then they go outside the household and they go out there in the streets. But then they get hooked up, in gangs and crime, and the next thing you know, they're lost to the system. They're lost to the jail walls and the prison cells, or they're lost to an early grave. And I say all of that to say this, that a lot of the stories that I've been hearing are true, because I work in the field. I work in the field of education. At the preschool level, children are already coming in beating up on teachers. I'm talking about flat out punching a teacher in the face. I'm talking about flat out wrapping a teacher's hair around their fingers and pulling a 4-year-old, where another staff has to step in and pull a 4-year-old off a teacher. And somebody on the outside looking in that really don't know may say, well, how can a teacher let a 4-year-old do that? It's not the teacher letting the 4-year-old do that, but there's so much going on in what that child has experienced, so much trauma that it's showing so much in that child's behavior, and it's so extreme. And then you have a teacher that has to be very careful that teacher don't act out of line or act out of order or anything like that, even though that teacher is getting abused. And you have a lot of children, especially nowadays, that are strong. So like a 4-year-old, like their hits and their punches and their kicks, like they hurt. If a 1 or 2-year-old got a mouthful of teeth and bite down on your arm, that is going to hurt. They have a mouthful of teeth. They're mad, they're angry, they're up there on 100, and they're hitting and slapping and kicking and doing all of that. And there's no need for a teacher should not, you can have a good teacher that desires to see all of their students reach their greatest potential and have such high expectations for their students, but do not want to come to school every day and get abused and get jumped on. And I know that these are children, but we need more parents to be involved. But then there's also a barrier, because you have a lot of parents that are trying to make ends meet, especially when we're talking about low-income families, when we're talking about low-income communities and neighborhoods, when we're talking about families that are living below the poverty line and things of that. A lot of single family households that they really don't have time. Like, they don't have time for meetings and conferences and phone calls and things of that. They have their own, they got so much going on themselves. But what I'm starting to see is, because when you have a mom that is trying to make ends meet, she's a single parent and she has multiple children, then a lot of times you have children that end up getting the shorter end of the stick. They're not getting their basic needs provided, or they're barely getting their basic needs provided. So any extra, it's like, I can't give to you, you know. So then that quality time, that, you know, good conversation, you know, that affirmation, you know, that affection and things of that, a lot of our kids are crying out for that, because we have a lot of, you know, single moms and single family households. Like, I don't have time for that, you know. I got too much going on. So then our kids, they miss out on so much. And I think they miss out on so much. They're crying out for so much. It's a cry for help. And then they're not getting what they need, you know, from the parent and from those in the household. They come to school and now they display this extreme behavior, or if they've experienced so much trauma already, traumatic already in the family background, that also shows in their behavior as well at the preschool level, you know. And what I've seen also too, because even when I was in Chicago, there was like so many fights every single day at my children's school, at the middle school and high school level. And it was really bad, where the schools had to be patrolled by police officers. There was a time where one of the teachers at my son's high school arm got broke. Like, a student jumped on the teacher, beat the teacher up, and broke the teacher's arm. And students were coming to school not to learn, not to receive education, but to do whatever they want to do. Curse teachers out, jump on teachers. If they had issues with other students, you know, it was a lot of, gangs and stuff going on in this school. Gang-like behavior and all of that going on in the schools. Kids coming and smoking in bathrooms and smoking weed and all of that in the gym and all of that. In situations like that, when our students are on that path, that's a destructive path, and that is a path that leads to our children being lost to system, our children being lost to the streets, our children being lost to an early grave. Because you have in a situation like that, you have a student that is so far gone. It's like, when the students should have gotten the help, when they should have gotten the counseling, when they should have gotten the services for a long period of time, nothing was being done. No one was really paying any attention. Now it's like things are so out of hand and out of control, and this child now has gotten so far gone. It's like, and sometimes it's like, maybe that, and then honestly, and I'm going to say this, that sometimes they could get so far gone that maybe jail is the best, or maybe juvenile is the best, you know, maybe, you know, because, you know, you have a lot of parents, especially single moms and things of that is like, you know, I've tried, I've tried, but I think that sometimes we can try, but then it's too late. You know, when we should have been trying, we should have been doing this early on, but now it's gotten so out of hand because so much time has passed where this child wasn't getting the help that they needed. There was a cry for help. Nobody was paying attention. And now it's like, it's gotten too far out of hand now. It's like, really, there's nothing that can be done, honestly. And then that's when it's unfortunate that it's the jail, it's the prison, it's the streets, it's the early grave. And you see this at the preschool level. So I get it, and I wanted to talk about this on my channel because I've been seeing a lot of that come up on my YouTube, like thread, my feed about, and I've been listening to everything these teachers are going through, how, you know, you just can't let children come to school and how students are coming to school and placing fear in teachers, where teachers get to a place where they don't want to say anything to the student because they're scared of the student, because they already know this student's behavior and how this student goes off and how this student pops off and how this student doesn't listen. And sometimes teachers, sometimes they get tired and they get drained, they get fed up, and sometimes they may give up, because they've tried, and they're not really getting a whole lot of support from admin. They're not really getting the support from the child's family, the child's parent or parents. And it's like, okay, I've done all that I can do. I don't think there's anything else I can do because this student is not listening to me. Anything I ask the student to do, they ignore me. Anything I give this student any kind of instructions, they don't follow instructions. They're just doing whatever they want to do, and nobody is holding this student accountable. And it's like, a teacher gets to a point like, if you're not going to come to school and learn and get your education, like, why are you coming? And the first thing that comes to my mind is just to terrorize. I can come to school, I can do whatever I want to do, I can roam the hallways, I can curse you out, I can jump on you, I can just do whatever I want to do. And that's what it boils down to, because they've gotten away with doing whatever they wanted to do. We also have to realize too that we're living in a time now where a lot of children are left to themselves. And what that means is that they're left to themselves to take care of themselves, to raise themselves. Because everybody else is doing whatever they want to do, and nobody is paying attention to a child that needs someone to raise him or her, that needs someone to take care of him and her, that needs someone to spend quality time with them, to raise them in the way that they shall go, and that they shall not depart from that. So then you have children that are being left to themselves because everybody else are saying, well, I have my life and I got to live my life. So you need to just do you and take care of you, and then also take care of your little brothers and sisters. So then now you have kids that are considered the head of the household, running the household, having to be the man or the woman of the household at a very young age. And they're just left to themselves. And they're just taking care of themselves. They're just raising themselves. Because daddy may not be around, or daddy may not be involved, and mom is working, or when she's not working, she's kind of doing her, or she's to herself. And then the kids are just having to just take care of themselves and having to feed themselves and clothe themselves and things of that. So it's a lot of that going on too. It's a lot of those type of situations that are going on too, where children are basically taking care of themselves. And then they get to a point where they're just doing whatever they want to do because of them taking care of themselves. They wasn't taught. They wasn't raised. They wasn't taught. They taught themselves. They raised themselves. They took care of themselves. So nobody was really there to hold them accountable. Nobody was there really to give any kind of discipline. So it's like, okay, I come to school, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I go home, I do whatever I want to do. And, as soon as we start seeing problems, as soon as we start seeing issues, especially in the education field, that has to be looked at closely. It has to be monitored. And, if we need to put services or supports or some kind of strategies in place, like, we have to jump on that right away. Because if we just let it go, it's just going to get worse. Sometimes we don't do anything about it because we feel like, oh, it'll go away. They'll grow out of it. This is just a phase. But I'm here to let somebody know that's not always the case. That's not always the case. It's not always the case where they'll get over this. They'll grow out of this. This is just a phase. Sometimes that if they don't get the help that they need, this is just only going to get worse. This behavior is only going to escalate. And sooner or later, they're going to be in elementary school. They're going to be getting kicked out. They're going to be getting suspended. They're going to be in middle school, high school, being expelled. They're going to be dropping out. It's just going to get worse because now they're on this destructive path that never ends well. That never ends well. We're seeing too many of our children, and they're getting younger and younger and younger, that are out here committing crime. And that you have adults that are actually scared of children because it's like the stuff that a lot of our kids are doing and involved in. You know, they're out here killing, they're out here shooting, they're out here robbing. There's no respect for authority. You know, I mean, it's sad. It's sad. But this is the time that we're living in. This is the time that we're living in. And to be a teacher in this day and age, you don't know the reality, because when you go to school for teaching, it prepares you as far as on the more knowledge. When you go to school for teaching, it prepares you as far as knowing the knowledge and having the knowledge when it comes to how children grow and how they develop. Okay, you gain the knowledge when you go to school. But the reality is when you actually walk into that classroom and that you have to encounter and that you have to interact with 20 or 25, 30, 35 different students with different attitudes, different behaviors, different circumstances, different backgrounds. That's the reality of it. You don't get the reality when you're actually in school and when you're going through those teacher preparation programs. The reality is when you actually enter into that classroom. And when you're dealing and when you have students that are extreme, that has extreme behavior problems. How do I handle this? How do I deal with this? What is it that I need to do in order to help this student? Has a teacher, because you don't really know that, or you really don't, they teach you in school when you're going for education about, having to create certain backgrounds, for students that are coming in with trauma, creating trauma sensitive classrooms, in things of that. But what do you actually do when you're just right there in the midst of it? When you have to make a decision? And I think honestly, the only thing that I can say is that working as a teacher, this is my advice, when you're dealing with so many kids that are coming in with so many issues and behavior problems, and there's a lack of parental involvement, the only thing you can do is do your best, to create a welcoming environment for that student. As much as you can, support that student, show love to that student, affirm that student, spend as much time that you can with that student or with students, show an interest in the things that student is interested in, have conversations with that student. Just do your best to try to be present and to support that student, or support your students in their learning and their development. Like, try to do your part to the best of your ability. As long as you know that you're doing what you need to do to help your students, then you should feel good about that. Like, as long as your students are in your classroom and you know that they're getting what they need, okay, they're getting what they need in your classroom, but you have no control over once they leave your classroom and go home. But as long as they're in your classroom, that you're doing your best, you're doing the best of your ability to help and support your students as much as possible. As much as possible. You're staying on top of things, you're sacrificing, you're collecting data, you're monitoring, you're trying your best to redirect negative behavior. You're doing your best to manage, manage the behavior in your classroom, working to increase your behavior management techniques in your classroom so that you're doing your best as a teacher. But then that you realize in hopes of that you're not alone, that you don't feel like you have to take everything on all by yourself, that you make sure that you're reaching out to your colleagues and you're also reaching out to also a special team of people and also to your administration and kind of getting them on board and how they can help you and how they can support you and assist you, as you deal with children who enter into your classroom who have behavior problems, behavior issues stemming from just a lot of trauma in that child's background. But yes, a lot of these teachers, I've been listening, and this stuff is true. This stuff is really happening. This stuff is really happening in schools. I'm seeing it at the preschool level. I'm seeing preschoolers jumping on teachers. I see preschoolers pulling hair and punching. I see preschoolers tearing up a classroom. I see preschoolers where parents are being called, come to the school and pick up your child because there's nothing else we can do. And this is at a preschool level. That students are getting kicked out of daycare because they can't do anything with the student at the daycare. The student is terrorizing, tearing up the classroom, don't want to participate in any kind of classroom activities. Just a lot of issues and a lot of trauma, And I just wanted to get on here and talk about that. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Like, it really starts early. And like, the earlier, the better. Like, as soon as you start seeing issues, as soon as you start seeing problems. But what I realize is that what's happening is, it just seems like a lot of our children, like, they're not really in some situations that for a long period of time, what they were going through, it just really wasn't paid close attention to, or that it may have been seen, or it may have been made obvious, but then no one really took it seriously. So now it could be things have gotten so extreme now, and out of hand and out of control. It's like nobody knows what to do now, and that's how they end up. I say they end up getting lost to our system and being lost to the streets, because when something should have been done, it wasn't. It was overlooked, or it really wasn't paid attention to, or someone thought it really wasn't a problem. It's something that they're going through. They'll get over it. It's just a phase. They don't always get through that. They don't, with proper help and support and services, yes. But if they're not getting the help, if they're not getting the support, if they're not getting the services, if they really don't see their parent really being involved, then it could worsen. It could get worse. That behavior could just get worse. And that's why you see a lot of our students mad and angry and upset and full of rage, and they enter straight into school early in the morning, and they're ready to fight, and they're ready to snap, and they're cursing their teacher out and things of that. And it's like, wow, like somewhere along the way, something was missed. Something wasn't really taken seriously. Something was ignored. Like, this when we see that, there is, in my opinion, there's a clear indication that there's a cry. There's been a long cry for help. There's been a long cry for love. There's been a long cry for quality time. There's when we see things like that. We have to pay more close attention, paying more close attention to our children. Like, I think as a parent, if we're really paying close attention to our children, that we should know when our children are off, when something isn't right, when they're not themselves. That's if we're really paying attention to them. But if we're really not paying any attention to them, honestly, as a parent, you're really not going to know if you're not really paying any attention to them. A lot of times, we're not really paying any attention to our children because we're so caught up in what we want to do as parents. And I'm just going to be honest. Like, I'm doing me, and honestly, I get that, because a lot of times, especially when you're a single parent, you have multiple kids, you're only one person. And it's like, man, you got 2, 3, 4, and 5 kids or individuals depending on you. That can really do something to your mental state. So, you can shut down, and just throw your hands up and just give up and say whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I just believe as a parent, just the worst it could be just so unfortunate just to kind of throw in the towel on your child, when for a long time, this is not something that just started happening. For a long time, there's been a cry for help, and me being a single parent, I've thought about it, but then I'm like, God, don't give me the strength, because I don't want to never give up on my children or throw in the towel on my children, because I know that God will not be pleased with that if I did that as a parent. Because God is holding me as a parent accountable, and that my children are my responsibility. And that He will never give up on me. So why me as a parent will give up on my children? And what I have to do as a parent is, God, give me strength. Give me the wisdom to keep parenting this gift that you have allowed me to have. And it's not easy when you're a single parent. When everything falls on you, if you don't do it, then it's not going to get done. It's those type of situations a lot of us as single parents have to go through and deal with. Like, if I don't pay the rent, then the rent's not going to get paid because there's no one else to pay the rent. You know what I'm saying? If I don't buy the food, then the food won't get bought because there's no one else to buy the food, So I just wanted to get on here and talk about that just the issues that I'm starting to see in the field. And a lot of those stories are true. These teachers are in these school buildings. They are in these classrooms, and they're dealing with some extreme, out of control behavior when it comes to students. Until next time, you take care of yourself and you be safe.